My body moves seeding from I did not want to listen to the I believe this was the keep patients. Hi, welcome to Felix Live. My name's Chris, and we're here in our own studio, and we're picking up a feed from East Suffolk Council, who are tonight discussing the ongoing situation with the beach huts on Felixstowe's prom outside the Spa Pavilion. As I'm sure most people are aware,
on an annual basis.
Let me just see if we can be clear here. So we're awaiting the start of that discussion about Felixstowe beach huts. And at the moment, the council are just completing the discussion before that, and we'll see where they end up. The discussion of the petition from Felixstowe beach hut owners should actually be coming up in the next 3 or 4 minutes, I hope, once they've clarified the situation on the discussion that they're having right now. Now, I don't know whether you can hear the council or not. I suspect you can't. And in fact, I hope you can't. Excuse me, but I can. And we'll come back to them as soon as we actually get to get onto that actual subject. One of the things that I want to just clarify for you as well is that the sound at the moment is very good from this particular speaker, but many of the speakers we cannot hear clearly. So that's one of those things that we can't do anything about. Okay, let's just go back to Claire, who's making a comment. No, you can't hear them at this moment, Claire, because I have cut the sound back, but I can hear them, which is jolly annoying because it takes your mind off it. We'll come back to the council, to their sound, as soon as they get onto the situation that we're talking about at the beach huts. In the meantime, they're talking about the position of councillors on external bodies, which at this point is not of much interest to us. Okay, well, yes, okay. Jerry? And Claire, it's my pleasure. I try and explain things the best I can. Sometimes I have to tell you, Claire, I do get things wrong, as I think everybody knows. There you go. But we're here at East Suffolk Council, watching this meeting going on. Hopefully something, our particular topic will turn up in a minute. For Claire, again, yeah, are there any public in the meeting? Yes, there are. If you look to the right of the screen, you'll see the public chairs. They're fairly limited. I think most of those folks are from the Beach Hut Association, and they'll be. I don't know whether they'll be speaking or not. I assume they get a limited amount of speaking time, but we will see. Okay, let's just pop into the meeting and see what they're saying. Shan't keep your mouth.
Councillor Robinson and Councillor Bank.
Councillor Patience, and that's then on the second one.
Councillor Daly. Okay, I think what the council are discussing at the moment are the appointment of councillors to outside bodies. A lot of councillors do take part in outside organisations, A, to represent the council, and B, to represent their, if you like, the council's constituents, because it's important that the council has a voice in outside organisations. So that's being discussed at the moment, and those councillors are being put in place to join outside organisations. Yeah, I think you're right. I think there may be more than that, but I'm not entirely sure. But we'll have to wait and see, I think, don't you, Claire? I know that certainly at Felixstowe there are it's possible to ask more questions, and at times it does get down into more of a discussion. We'll see what they come up with. Okay, sorry about that. Right, let's go back to the council.
Councillor Robinson and Councillor Back.
Councillor Patience is staying on the second.
Councillor Patience can abstain on the second.
Councillor Patience abstain on the second. Councillor Robinson.
Do bear in mind that councils have a great deal of work to get through to ensure that the representation they give us, the people, is done properly. We all have this problem with councils. I think everybody does, insofar as we say, oh, council do this and the council do that. I think the reality is that in my experience of working with councillors, I've done that for about 15 years in Felixstowe and around, and they do work extremely hard. They don't get paid at all. They do get some expenses, which I think is pretty damn sensible when you think about it. Some of the councillors here have driven from the other extremity of the council areas. For instance, Felixstowe, they've had to drive a long way. I don't know whether they've car shared or whatever, but they certainly deserve to get their mileage back, etc. And they deserve to get their time covered if they lose time from work, etc. So let's get it straight and say that councillors do a damn fine job. In reality, and although we moan about councillors and what they do sometimes, it's worth remembering they do stuff, and without them, things wouldn't get done, and they wouldn't get done A, properly, or B, at all in many areas. Heavens, justifying the council. Let's go back to the meeting and just see what's happening there.
Councillor Robinson, 28 votes for Councillor Back and 11 votes for Councillor Patience. So Councillor Robinson and Councillor Back should be elected.
Okay, they're still doing. They're still dealing with councillors going on outside organisations, but it won't be long before we get to the beach hut saga, and we'll see what comes up when we get to that.
First for hands for Councillor Cabinet, and then second to raise hands for Councillor Beach. Okay. Raise and seconder for each candidate. Councillor Hyde.
Councillor Gooch.
Bear in mind that the sound we're getting is coming directly from the council chamber. It's the sound we're getting, and we can do nothing about it. I'm sorry, I got that a little bit confused there. I didn't realise it was a vote. Looks like a vote. So we'll leave that one and come back to them. Right, okay. And this is still a continuing thing about councillors on outside bodies. Hopefully we'll get to our little section of interest soon, because this is the bit before that.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman, and forgive me for changing the order, but it does make the next bit for me, which is in respect to the recommendations, slightly easier. So with your blessing, I'll move the recommendations in respect to this paper. That is that councillors be appointed to those outside bodies listed in Appendix A. Oh, is there? My apologies entirely. I thought you'd done them both together. I apologise.
That's Councillor Steve Gallant, who is leader of the council. He is a Felixstowe councillor as well, and or he represents Felixstowe ward. And his from my point of view, he is nice and loud, and he's easy to hear. So we'll get him speaking, I think, about the beach hut situation. He will be delivering the report. I don't blame you.
Year. However, that is the exception to that is the ones that we have just sorted out, as it were. So those two exceptions as sorted out, as they do appear on Appendix A. Two, that the leader of the council be authorised to fill any outstanding vacancies unfilled by council. And three, that the leader be granted delegated authority to make any necessary changes to the membership of the outside bodies for the remainder of the.
Bear in mind that a lot of what's being said here and a lot of what's being done here is very routine, but it does need to be done, because otherwise you cannot get work done and you can't get people put in place and officially doing their job. So it's a bit, although it drags on, and I have to say from my point of view, I find it fairly boring when I attend, then I think it's got to be done. That's the reality of councils. Councils have work to do that we do not see, and quite often we have trouble understanding. But the reality is that that gets the work of the council done and manages our area, because that's what councils do. They manage our area to the best of their ability. Quite often, I think they get some topics right, they get some topics wrong. Oh, I see. We look like we're having. Oh, this is the guy. So I'll say farewell for a moment, and we'll go back to the council.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. Principal reasons that we're here this evening are threefold. Our petition, I stand in front of you as the representative voice of over 4,000 people. Our objective is clear. So it wasn't to wipe the slides off. Our objective is clear. 4,000 people are calling on you to reverse this decision and find a way to allow the spa beach huts to remain. The third reason is the historical significance. These huts are now recognised as the oldest beach huts in the UK. Protecting them and not removing them should be our joint objective. This beach hut site, as I say, is the oldest in Britain. Huts have been continuously on this site since at least 1891, and they are in a designated conservation area. It's been confirmed by the UK's leading architectural historian that at least 6 of the huts can be dated back to the early 1900s and before. Removing them is throwing away our heritage and an act of civic vandalism. Reversing this decision has huge support. No, I think you're too far. Reversing this decision has huge support from historians, celebrities, and others in the media, due to the fact that the original decision is contrary to East Suffolk's rules for the conservation area, contrary to the touristic commercial objectives of the council's own town plans for Felixstowe, and contrary to ESC's core values. Sorry. Two principal reasons, just to carry on, two principal reasons are repeatedly given for eviction notices to be served on the 44 beach hut owners. The first is that they cause an obstruction. We refute the claim that these huts are an obstruction, as huts have wintered on the prom for almost 80 years, since the Second World War. In addition, there have actually been no complaints whatsoever from the public regarding obstruction, including at the busiest of times. The second reason given is that beach levels are too low. The East Suffolk has a coastal plan strategy with the stated objective to hold the line. This plan addresses erosion and replenishment within the next 3 to 5 years, which we feel is a very small time concession relative to the century plus that these huts have stood there. The key, we think, is that we need to communicate. Please, can we talk? Our vision is to work with you to create a win-win-win, a heritage asset which would comprise new signage, information on UK beach hut history, educational days, heritage days, and so forth. And all the energies of these sorts of debates will be thrown behind creating this and making it a success. We believe that our platform proposal is truly the most viable option. Platforms are a proven, sustainable technology with a minimum 20-year lifespan, and there will be no health and safety risk if constructed correctly and by experienced carpenters. Examples exist on Felixstowe Prom today, some of which have been there for over 80 years. We invite you to visit and see them, as their presence is also, we believe, omitted from some of the papers that in the agenda in front of you today. We also like to thank the council for the idea of niches, which is a further strong solution, allowing huts to remain in this location. They'd be slid in and flush up to the prom. And either of these approaches will meet council objectives for cost, sustainability, and safety. And the hut owners agree that this cost should not be met by ESC or your residents. The hut owners are prepared to pay for that themselves. This next slide, I'll invite the council to digest later. It's a summary of the win-win-win that we see in front of us. In conclusion, as I said, we want to talk. I would like to draw your attention as well to the most recent communication, which I think should be in your packs, with a letter from the Council for British Archaeology, which really only came through to us last night. And I want to be clear to councillors here that, to everyone in the room, that a vote to remove the spa beach huts is actually a vote in contravention of UK national planning law. So please, as we have said, can we sit down and talk about this? And you're all very much welcome to come and visit us. I have a group of hut owners with me here tonight who would be more than happy to provide you with cups of tea and all sorts of other hospitality down on Felixstowe Prom. With the forbearance of the chair and your leader, Councillor Gallant, I have a small panel of individuals here who are now confirmed experts in beach hut history, and we'd be very delighted to have your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I thought I'd been promoted then to chairman, but I'll just say as a lowly leader, if I may. Members, this is clearly a very important issue. It's a very important issue for the people here. It's a very important issue for a number of residents. And as you've heard, there is some 4,000 people that have signed a petition. You will be able to look at that petition online and see what it is. Before going in, I too have a presentation because I think it's important that members fully understand the issues that are there and the work that has gone into it so far. But I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to deliver that presentation in 5 minutes. So I am therefore asking council or proposing that procedure rule 13.4 be suspended for all councillors in this debate. I think it's important that we have an opportunity to fully debate it. So procedure rule 13.4 restricts the amount of time that any member may speak within a debate. I cannot deliver that presentation to you and make you fully aware of everything that goes along there without seeking that to be suspended. So I so propose and call for a second.
Chairman, I'm so
I'm happy to. Well, who's done?
Oh, carry on.
I'm happy to second this proposal and welcome the opportunity for council to debate it.
All those in favour?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members. As I say, I think for the benefit of all, it's important that we can spend as much time as is necessary, ensuring that we fully understand the issues that are there. I've got a presentation, and it is a fair few slides, but again, it needs to be, and I'm going to be assisted in that presentation by Laura Hack, who's been working very closely with Beach Hut owners and the Beach Hut Association and myself in trying to come to this. So I will start off and then hand over to Laura in a short while. Next slide, please. So members, just a reminder on the screens in front of you, and I'm sure you've got it in the papers in front of you, exactly what the wording of the petition is that we've been required and requested to debate tonight. I think the wording of the petition is one thing, but I think, as alluded to, it goes much deeper than just the words that are presented on that screen there. Next slide, please. So the current situation, as it is, there are 44 beach huts are on the promenade at the Spa Pavilion, which is the theatre in Felixstowe, those of you who don't know it, without a licence. The site licences were terminated for their positions on the beach on the 31st of March of this year. So invoices for the 22-23 year have not been issued to those 44 site licence holders. That is a deficit to this council of some £23,420 for the council in licence fees. So just for clarification, members, and there may be some members that aren't aware of how this works. Beach huts, the building, the structure, the wooden beach hut is owned by a member of the public or somebody. It's not owned by East Suffolk Council. We issue licences for that. Forgive the use of the word hut. For that hut to be in a given location. So we issued a license for it to be there. The council submitted 4 planning applications, which were heard in March 22, which would have offered new locations for all 44 huts. But 2 of those were refused by the local planning authority, and there are members of the planning committee in this room. And it's not my intention this evening to get into the pros and cons of whether they should or they shouldn't, of what happened at those planning meetings. That is outside the remit of the discussion this evening. We have 30 new site huts have been secured, and licence holders have been asked their preferences for the 30 sites, with consideration to health and to personal circumstances. That does leave, as you can all do the maths, 14 huts where we have no alternative place for them as stands at the moment. And it is worth me pointing out to members now that the Felixstowe Beach Hut and Chalet Association have served this council with an application for judicial review, which was submitted on the 4th of May of this year. So we are subject to a judicial review process. Next slide. The council issues 1,675 licenses for huts and chalets right across the district. There are 919 licensed sites for beach huts in Felixstowe, and these huts, as I say, are all privately owned and can be sold by the owners as they see fit. Hut locations are moved from time to time due to coastal forces, beach maintenance or development reasons, and the last time that this happened was about 1,000 licenses at Manor End in Felixstowe in the 1980s. Currently, our licenses are issued on a 3-year term. So you can do the maths as well as I can. The 44 license holders make up 4.8% of the beach huts in the resort, and the 14 obviously just 1.5%. What's important here is who's to say that in the next 40 years or so, more relocations may be required. So we need to think carefully about the 919 huts that are at Felixstowe and the challenges that coastal management are faced with, and we need to, by its very nature, recognise the fact that the huts are temporary structures, and that means they are movable. And in decisions that this council makes now will set a precedent going forward about what we should and shouldn't be doing right across those 1,675 licenses that we issued. Next slide, please. So the spa site licenses, members, if you can focus in on the image that's on that screen there, you will see, and I do appreciate it's quite difficult for some members, not because of the position of the screen, not that members can't understand it, I'm sure they can. Those little boxes that you're seeing there are the positions that the licenses are on the beach at Felixstowe. So the Felixstowe Promenade, which sits behind that, has a highway status, is maintained by Suffolk County Council to footpath standards. Beach huts at Pier South, as it says there, Pier North and Spa have a license to be located on the beach, with the positions shown by markers on the edge of the prom, but a move to the promenade at the end of the season between October and Easter, simply for winter storage. Next slide, please. So you'll start to see on the images that you've got there about the issues that are happening in respect of the falling away of the beach material, the scouring of the beach material by tides, etc. So in July 2017, concerns were raised that beach material was being washed away under the huts located directly in front of the spa pavilion due to tidal erosion. And now subsequently, 9 huts, numbers 32 to 40, as it says there, were moved back onto the prom for safety reasons for the rest of the season, due to the continued, what they call cliffing of the beach within this particular bay. There's an image of it there. Next slide, please. In February, officers from the coastal management team undertook a site visit and determined there was not enough beach material in situ available to create a sand platform for any of the 55 huts at the spa, and the decision was made to leave them on the prom temporarily until a solution could be determined. On the 1st of March 2018, the beast from the east, you will remember that, members, I'm sure, concluded with Storm Emma, scouring beaches further, exposing concrete and metal structures from World War II. And the image you can see on the screen there is those structures. So prior to all this situation arising, those beach huts would have sat on a platform created on that beach that is no longer there. Hut licenses, license holders were written to explaining the situation, and a range of solutions were explored throughout the year, and a meeting was held with hut owners in December, giving options for relocation. Next slide, please. The option choices as returned by the hut owners in that consultation, as you can see there, the first and most positive outcome that they could see was the beach platforms. The second was a relocation to Manor End, and the third was to Pier South. You can see the other options that are listed there. Can we move on? Thank you. In 2019, I bring you forward now to 2019. Planning permission was received for the creation of 16 new beach hut sites at the Dip in Felixstowe. That's an area further north from where we're talking about at the moment, those that aren't familiar. There was a mixture of new huts and relocation opportunities. 2 huts have relocated here from the spa, and there are currently 4 spaces empty, which is part of the 30 that we have as relocation opportunities. The planning application was submitted to create a further 6 hut sites at Pier South, alongside the extension and strengthening of the concrete wall. This was rejected by the local planning authority committee on its first submission. A planning application to create 5 new hut spaces to the south of the current row at Manor End. Again, that's another area of Felixstowe, for those that aren't familiar, was granted, and 4 huts have subsequently moved to this location. Members, I've given you a sort of bit of an insight into where we are with this. There is a lot more detailed stuff that you perhaps need to know, not into great detail, but you need to understand what the issues are, why we can't just do this or do that or do the other. So we are joined remotely by Laura Hack, I hope, who is going to talk us, there she is, who is going to talk us through the next few slides, and then I will come back to you, offer some conclusions, and be very happy to take any questions. Laura, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me. Yeah. Okay, so carrying on with the timeline, in 2019, we put together a proposal for the creation of wooden platforms. This was what hut owners wanted, and we felt it was a good idea. But however, with advice from planning and coastal management and a structural engineer, the design that beach huts that currently sit at the Floodyears site was considered not robust enough for this area. This area of the beach gets scoured a lot more than at the Floodyears side of things. And it was felt that individual platforms, 1 per beach hut, did not currently meet health and safety criteria. It was determined that a large platform in alternative bays on which 8 to 10 huts could be placed would be the way forward. We presented these consultation plans to hut licence owners at a face-to-face meeting at Felixstowe Town Hall in June of 2019. We had some initial costings for these proposals, and these were costed about £500,000 for the 4 platforms. However, after further research, further discussion with structural engineers and coastal management, there were concerns over putting a business case to Cabinet for the timber platforms, and this was raised internally with officers. The project was deemed high risk, detrimental to the environment, not simple to engineer, costly, and only had a projected 20-year lifespan in this location, because the effect of the tide would batter it a lot more than it does at the Floodyear end. And there was also no guarantee of achieving planning permission. The proposed bays for their location were also not the preferred ones of hut owners. We had to look at alternative bays rather than 4 bays of these larger platforms. And many of them expressed a wish through the association to go back to their former locations. Next slide, please. So we came up with another proposal, which was a new idea, which was demountable concrete blocks, and this happened within 2020. We made a submission to planning for an engineering trial over the summer period to use 2 of the existing bays that beach huts had formerly been placed on at the spa. The proposal for the trial was an experimental design, building up concrete retaining wall behind which sand would be infilled and levelled and the huts could be placed onto. The wall was proposed to be made of interlocking concrete demountable blocks, approximately 2 metres by 1 metre deep, and built 2 blocks high. The costing for the trial itself was £131,000, and the cost of the whole scheme would have been just a bit more than £400,000. There was also a further annual cost for removing the blocks for the winter if we were to do this, which was £156,000 per year. Although the trial received planning permission, due to COVID hitting and the subsequent lockdowns, the concrete could not be manufactured as all but essential businesses halted manufacture. Next slide, please. Carrying on to 2021, in February, we had a number of storms, and we had Storm Darcy hit the Suffolk coast and scour the beaches further. This put a halt to the trial as there wasn't actually enough material to instate the blocks onto. By this time, we'd run out of feasible options, and the council wrote to hut owners stating that return to the beach was not actually possible in this location. We turned to other options available to us, looking at sites from Manor End all the way down to Clifflands, and we put a number together. We discussed these with representatives of the Felixstowe Beach Hut and Chalet Association, and 4 were put forward as relocation opportunities to hut owners. Hut owners were updated at a face-to-face meeting in July. The applications for the 4 sites were prepared in the back end of 2021 and submitted to planning. After working through over the 20 different options that we've looked at, these were the last 4 available to us. Next slide, please. In February of this year, the council wrote to spa hut licence holders with notice of termination and gave the date of the planning committee where all the 4 applications were being heard. If all 4 planning applications were successful, there would have been 64 new sites for relocation. That's the 4 new planning sites and the 6 we'd already identified that we had as well. However, the local planning authority refused 2 of the sites, totaling 34 hut spaces, and that left only 30 available for the current hut owners. Hut licence holders were written to and asked to give their preferences for the sites available and any reasons why they had preferences for particular locations. The council then received a petition that we're currently debating on the 24th of March, and on the 4th of May, the council was served with an application for a judicial review. So that's the timeline up to date as it is. And if we just go to the next slide. We've been asked on a number of occasions, why not replenish the beach? And I just wanted to touch on this. So we looked into this extensively, and to carry out beach replenishment required to the extent needed for beach huts, extensive beach material would need to be brought in from either a donor site locally or a quarry with the right type of sand. This map shows the identified potential donor site at North Felixstowe to the seaward of the golf course, which is an Environment Agency managed area. Movement of beach material from here to the spa would require a combination of on and off road haulage with double handling in between. As well as permissions for the Environment Agency, the council would also need permission and a licence from Crown Estates. Breeding birds use the vegetated shingle area above high tide for nesting between March and August, and as sand would be moved in April, mitigation for this would be required. There is great uncertainty around the longevity or the stickiness, basically, of the material, with thousands of tonnes capable of being moved by a single storm. So even if we could move it to this location, would it stay? The volume of beach material required to be imported to support the 2021 works was planned at around 400 cubic metres to create one planned sand platform. We needed 4. So this is £30 a square cubic metre at 2021 prices, and this would be around £48,000 per replenishment for the 4 bays. And we said on a worst case scenario, we would have to do that every year to give the required amount of beach material needed to keep beach huts in the spa location. Next slide, please. Next one is, why not beach management now? So the design of the 2012 works in Felixstowe, around the seafront, the groins, etc., did anticipate that beach volumes in the bays would actually reduce over time and additional recharge would be required. There were modifications to groins were considered as part of future works and were also identified as possibly being needed, subject to monitoring their performance. A recharge is included in the council's capital programme for after 2025. However, the exact date of this cannot be determined, will be determined by the monitoring of change in the standard of protection provided by the defences. So this is expected to be several £million, and a central government grant in aid fund will be needed. but this must meet the criteria. It is very unlikely granting aid would be justified for an amenity benefit grounds alone. The trigger for this will be when beach levels reduce to such an extent that the seawall is at risk, and this is not yet the case. It should be noted that the level of beach material to support beach huts on a platform is around 2 centimetres from the top of the prom, and that is much greater than the material needed for effective coastal protection. It may be that changes to the groins would improve beach stability. However, the cost of modifying one groin is estimated at about £250,000. We would need 5 in this area. And we've already touched on beach replenishment issues. Recharging the beach through dredging is an extremely expensive option. Okay, next slide, please. And why not the prom? Okay, so until 4 years ago, huts were only located on the prom in winter. The prom is an important tourist feature in the resort and an attraction in its own right. The bylaws for the prohibition of cycling on the prom were relaxed a few years ago, and it should be remembered that it has highway status. The beach huts significantly restrict the width of the prom and thus enjoyment of other prom users, and presents a health and safety issue, particularly to the safe passages of cyclists, people in wheelchairs and parents with pushchairs or escorting small children. There is a major concern by the council that during local events, restrictions created by beach huts on the prom push crowds towards this open seawall edge. Huts by themselves take up approximately 40% of the total of the width of prom available in this area. In addition to being used by cyclists, access is required by service and cleaning vehicles and mechanised equipment. Dust carts are 2.5 metres wide, and this leaves less than half a metre each side to pass in some locations. In the winter months, this is less of an issue, but the summer months sees prom in use much more. Okay, next slide, and back to Steve.
Thank you. And can I just offer my particular thanks to Laura? Laura is COVID positive at this moment in time. Has probably only just got out of her bed in order to join us this evening and do this presentation. So many thanks, Laura, and we wish you well. It was her intention to be here, and that's why she's not. But there we go. So, in conclusion, members, and as you can see on there, the beach huts at the Spa Pavilion were removed from the beach and placed on the promenade as a result of the coastal erosion, the beach scouring, damage taking away much of the beach material, making the area uneven, low-lying, and more prone to further movement of the sand and gravel that is there. This is not something any of us want. You know, that's the first thing. The last thing I want is not to have those beach huts back on the beach. But that's where they should be, on the beach, not on the promenade. And I think that's the issue. So all this historical, they've always been here. They haven't. They've been there for 4 years on the promenade. Prior to that, they were on the beach. Now, we've looked at over 20 options for reinstatement. We have looked at over this 4-year period. We haven't just been sat there doing nothing. Laura and many of the other teams and officers involved in this have really looked at all the options that we can. And the last thing I would want to do is to take away from anybody something that they enjoy. That's the last thing that anybody would want to do, and the last thing this council would want to do. We've heard a bit about beach platforms, and it was mentioned by the representatives here of the Beach Hut Association, the hut owners, and it was also touched on by Laura. The way I sort of get my head around this is, yes, we have some huts on platforms at the Fludgers. The Fludgers is a pub just up the road, hotel pub, and opposite that there are some beach huts that are there on wooden platforms for those of you that haven't at the site. The way I sort of get my head around this is, imagine that I bought a building plot, and next to that building plot was a 16th century cottage. And I thought to myself, with this building plot, wouldn't it be a good idea if I built a replica 16th century cottage right next to it? Now, you know, particularly those members that are on the planning committee, that I would never get those plans through. They would say the ceilings are too low, the stairs are too high, the walls aren't straight, you can't get the level of insulation. you know, planning regulations would not allow me to build a 16th century cottage today. Now, absolutely, that these beach platforms are not subject to the same level of building regulations. So I'm not suggesting that for a minute. Please don't think that I am. But they are subject to that due diligence, to the safety, and to the construction requirements that are there today. So it's not about building the same thing as we've got somewhere else. And it is not about looking at that place there and going, well, we've got one of those there, we'll do it here. This area here is subject to very different pressures and very different coastal movements than that place over there. They're two very different, even though they are relatively a short distance away. So we used consultants, structural engineers, coastal management. We've got one of the best coastal management teams in Europe, let alone in the country. You know, we have the best engineers that you could possibly have. We have employed structural engineers. We've looked at the beach platform. It's all very well the members of the public saying, we'll pay for them. Yeah, you'll pay for them at the cost, but not at the cost that we're talking about in order for them to be both sustainable and maintainable and usable. You're talking about £500,000. You're not talking about £3,000. There is a big difference in those figures. And whoever builds them, we have this vicarious liability, this responsibility as the landowner, as the person that is issuing this license, to make sure that what we are issuing a license for, the use of that is safe and is appropriate. So, members, it's really, really difficult. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah.
To give it a fair hearing, I would like to suggest that we have another 30 minutes. So I need to propose in a second.
Well, clearly, Madam Chairman, I'm very happy to propose that. We do extend the prayer.
Second. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. That's carried.
Thank you. And actually, I didn't see much reluctance on the faces of the members, so thank you for that. It is an important issue and certainly important for the people we've got. That's my final slide. So, members, what is it that I would be asking of full council this evening? And this is not a proposal this time. I'm very happy to take as many questions as you want to throw at me. I'll bring in the experts should I need to, and I'm very happy to listen to your suggestions and to enjoy a full debate on this matter within the next 30 minutes. But at this moment's time, as I stand before you, this is what I'm asking for from full council. I'm asking that full council shares in the disappointment expressed by the 44 affected beach hut owners. And that is a disappointment that anyone would feel if something that they enjoyed on a regular basis was compromised, was changed, was taken away from them. I think it would be right that we would feel disappointed about that as well. We acknowledge that coastal erosion is an escalating issue and ongoing risk to our resorts, assets and facilities. I think it is right that we can and we should acknowledge that. I think and I would ask for your benevolence in this, that we appreciate the hard work of officers. I've seen that firsthand, and I know some of the members of the public too, seen the hard work of officers to find a solution acceptable to all parties. I would like us to acknowledge that. To recognise the permanent placement of huts on the promenade will restrict its use by the wider community. All I'm asking you to do is recognise that that is an impact. I'm asking you to recognise that that will restrict its use by the wider community. I would ask that we remain willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas, and this is about new ideas for relocating the 14 huts left without site. And finally, I would ask that full council supports the actions to date and directs the results of the judicial review that are reported back to full council in due course. Those are the things that I'd ask you to consider this evening. I won't deliver those as a proposition, as a proposal at this time, but I'm very happy to take any questions or join in any debate. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members.
Yes, question, Leader. Has the plan proposed by the beach hut owners to deepen the niches where the beach huts are, has that been addressed by the council and looked at? So at least we get to keep some of the huts there.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chairman, thank you for the question. The cutting out of niches and it's not a secret fensible in the wall that abuts the back of the promenade has been considered, and we've had those conversations with both with the planning officers, the planning authority. We are starting to cut into an amenity that is used by many other people. The area behind that is part of the Spa Gardens, is a heritage site, and the Felixstowe councils will know it better than I. And it is an area of green, of grass that is used by other people. So everything has an impact, and it has been considered, and it has been rejected as a viable option.
Yes, that would be my exact question.
Thank you, Chair. Just for my clarification in my head, so we're talking 14 beach huts that need relocating?
Well, no.
Sorry. Okay, and just as a supplementary to that, sorry, your last slide that you had up, you said that you were happy. Sorry, Ali, is that possible? Sorry. It says that you're willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for the relocation of 14 huts. So where will those 14 huts need to go whilst we are in mediation? Can they stay where they are, or do they have to move? Just clarification.
Okay, just for clarification, so where those huts currently site, there is no planning permission for them to be there. That's the first thing. So there is no planning permission, and there is no planning permission being sought by East Suffolk Council for them to remain there, because we don't think that's an appropriate place for them to be. So the situation as is at the moment is that those 14 huts have had their license revoked. They do not have a site. This is incredible. You know, it's not something oh great, they haven't got a site. No, this is very serious and very sad, but they don't have a site to go. So they need to be removed. The remainder of the 44, the 30 huts, there is an alternative site that will be licensed for them to go to. So this is about progressing this forward and moving this forward, rather than kicking it down the road for decisions to be made. Now, as you say there, the remain willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for relocating the 14 huts left without site. We are continuing to look at options, and just yesterday, and I'm not going to tell you what it was because it would be entirely inappropriate, because I'm not sure it have legs, but all the time we are looking at other options. Well, could we do this? Could we do that? You know, well, what can we do? The last thing I want is to disappoint anybody. That's the reality of it. But we are where we are, members. So thank you for that. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Yeah, similar sort of question. Perhaps more specifically, so what, in terms of the mediation and looking at alternatives, it's great. I applaud the fact that things are being looked at. So what are the timelines here in terms of the 14 that is having to be gone? Is that after the judicial review, or I mean, what are people being told in terms of when they've got to go? And is there any chance that these new options, the things that are being looked at, will be in place before they have?
Okay, so they need to go, and they need to go now. That's the situation that we are, and this is what has prompted the petition, I'm sure, is that we've got to the end of the road. So we've done 4 years of this. We've got to the end of the road. The fact of the matter is that they need to go now. Now, let's be very clear that this is not just about the 14 huts. The 44, I won't say that, that's not entirely accurate. The majority of the 44 hut owners, because I have spoken to some that actually want to move and just get this put behind them, don't want to move. They want to stay where they are. Yeah, so we are not pushing against an open door of going, okay, come on, you 30, off we go, and oh look, you 14, you haven't got anywhere to go, goodbye. That's not the case. It is much wider than that. in that all 44 of the huts, no, the vast majority of 44 of those huts want to stay where they are. So that's the situation. We have got to the point where we're saying you cannot stay there anymore, which is why a judicial review has been started, and why there is this petition here this evening for full council to discuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a ward member for that area, and of course it has caused much attention, not only in our area but also widely across the UK. And one of the questions that residents have asked me, which I feel is very important, is that, and I'm aiming this at Laura if she's still online, how many of the 44 beach hut owners are actually Felixstowe residents? And how many have we contacted Suffolk County Council Highways, reference the appropriate licensing, and whether or not they would be prepared to go to the Secretary of State to get a section 177, I believe, to permanently place them on the prom. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chairman, I think I will need the assistance of Laura, or perhaps Ms. Jarvis, but I'm not sure we have those exact figures. But I think, you know, the councillor raises a really interesting point. You know, are we bothered as a council, and I don't mean that flippantly, are we bothered as a council how many of those affected beach hut owners are residents, or are they just people that we would seek to support anyway if they are visitors to our district? I'll leave that hanging there, members, but we can get that number for you should you go decide and share it with other members. In respect of the county council and the highways, I don't think we have approached in respect of that, because it is not the ambition of this council to be a party to the remaining of the beach huts remaining on the promenade, which was only ever a temporary situation because they could not be moved back to their historical location on the beach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councillor Davis, for that very thorough briefing. And you can see the document. Just two questions, and you may get answer it. In 2018, we were offered to be relocated to the dip, as I was correct, but only one person took up the offer. Firstly, that's the first question. Do we know why that was unpopular? Secondly, March 2022, do we know why there was any room for appeal when two of the four sites were refused? Is there any wiggle room on going back to planning and saying, hang on a minute, and we'll look at this again, bearing in mind complications? And I do sympathise with the objective, but I also sympathise with the problem, because as you say, Steve, those have been going for a long time, and time, literally waking over. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Madam Chairman. Okay, first of all, Peter, in respect of the dip, so it would be fair to say, and I stand to be corrected, it'd be fair to say that the beach huts though located in the area we're talking about, in the Spa Pavilion, are in a fairly central and area that have around them a good deal of facilities and have open access to, well, used to have, because they were on the beach, have open access to the beach. And that area of beach is an amenity beach for the town. It is an area of beach that is used regularly by families, etc., and can still be, because there are no platforms on it. That's another important point. The dip, which is the area that you refer to, is further to the north of that. Thank you. It's further to the north, moving towards the golf club area in Felixstowe. It is on an area of concrete, which is set back behind the promenade wall. It's where there's an old lifeguard hut there, and also some water sports. There's a water sport ramp there, so it provides a different offer, it would be fair to say. So that is why I believe, but I can't speak for everybody involved, there would be less take up of that. So that's in respect of that point there. The second point was, just remind me, in respect of
Planning applications.
planning applications. Okay, so it's a difficult one, isn't it, members? We are both the applicant and the planning authority. You know, if we can't convince ourselves, are we really going to go to appeal against ourselves? Let's be realistic. Is that really something that we would want to appeal against ourselves as a planning authority? The planning committee, I watched that meeting, gave due deliberation. They reached a conclusion that I didn't personally agree with, but that doesn't matter because I'm not a member of that planning committee. You know, that was a matter for the planning committee. I don't think there was scope. I don't think there is scope really for us to challenge, but there is always opportunity to look at further applications that may present sites in a different location or in a different way, and both of those remain options.
I assume that what you're saying to me, that obviously we're not, but in terms of judicial review process.
Yeah, I mean, the judicial review will not look at, to my knowledge, at the planning process, but will rather look at the decision-making process of the East Suffolk Council.
Please, I understand that the Secretary of the Chalet Association hopes to East Suffolk tenancy of will, and I understand that that could have been adopted to allow the huts to sit on the common with this so I'm not going to go back tonight. I'll be well.
Well, through you, Madam Chairman, I can give the answer. It's not the current view of this council that we want them to remain where they are on the promenade. That's the starting point of this. The whole purpose of going down this road and being at this point 4 years on from a temporary placement on the promenade is that East Suffolk Council, as it stands at the moment, but we are the council. You can change my mind by just telling me. You know, that's why we're here. Is that it is not the ambition of East Suffolk Council to allow them to remain on the promenade, because that is having a detrimental effect to other users of the promenade and sets a precedent for other huts to be so placed in the future should the need arise. And the view of Felixstowe Town Council supports that, the view of the corporate body, not of the individual members. I won't deem to suggest that the individual members, but the corporate view of Felixstowe Town Council supports that premise.
Can I just say that considering the detailed report we received from the it's disappointing to see that there's a lack of engagement regarding the decision being made.
Thank you. It's a process that we're still working through. We're working through that with the assistance of the Beach Hut and Chalet Association. So really, there's no easy way of doing this, is there? You know, we've got 44 huts, 30 of them are going to get a place and 14 on. That really boils down to, not being flippant here, putting names in a hat. You know, that's about the only fair way of doing that. because I can't think of a fairer way. So a random number generator rather than a hat, but it will actually be something like that that is establishing that, and then deciding, because they're not all moving to one location, as to a pecking order of how we decide which one of those goes where. So that is a process that is ongoing as we speak. In respect of the point that you make there, Councillor Cloak, Judy, I have tried and tried. I'm a ward councillor for Felixstowe, and this is why I am stood here talking about this and have been so involved in this. It actually sits not within my portfolio, but on the broad shoulders of this person sitting to my left. But I think, in fairness to Craig, in fairness to the fact that I know the community, in fairness to the fact that I understand the local concerns, and I've taken this monkey on myself, because I think that's the right thing to do, and I think I owe it to the residents of Felixstowe to do that. But I have tried my utmost all the way along, as have the officers, to fully engage. I spent several hours at Trinity Park with all the beach hut owners, all the affected beach hut owners, outlining some of the slides in this presentation and looking at and explaining to them where we have been and what we have done. And I won't say that was a pleasant experience, because it wasn't, but it was a necessary experience. So I believe that we are fully engaged with all the hut owners all the way through this process to the best of our ability. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Leader, on these, there's two things. We saw on the slides where they were going to put concrete blocks in and then remove them. However, if them concrete blocks had been put in and we had a surge storm and the beach washed away beneath where those concrete blocks were, we could have, instead of walking on the sands, and we could walk into any depth of water. So that could be a health and safety risk that I would not be prepared to see this council take. The second part of my question is, they're talking about these platforms. I've seen these platforms. I've seen them in use. I know how effective they can be. But I also know Felixstowe Beach, where they're talking about. Our planners or our engineers recommend piling. Now, I would go along with that piling. Has the difference between the proposal that the beach hut owners have and their plan, I've seen their plan, I mean, they're talking about oak, wood, etc., just standing on the beach. Well, the surge title is take that away. I suppose who's responsible if that happens? Is it the beach owners or is it us? Because, or is it Crown property? But more importantly, has it been discussed with them the reason why our structural engineers are advising this? Because the difference is phenomenal amount of money, and I don't expect beach owners to pay them, well, unless they sell beach huts for a lot of money.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Madam Chairman, thank you very much. In respect to the concrete blocks, I think, I thought at first we cracked it with that. I thought this was really good. And, I sat and looked at the plans and considered the plans, thought, yeah, this is actually doable. There would have been a significant cost on an annual basis to remove them from the beach, because you can't leave them on the beach during the storm season for the very reasons that you allude to, Tony. The tide and sea is incredibly powerful. I'm sure we've all seen it, but you'll go down there one day at the beach and you go, where's the beach gone? And it's moved along 3 days. Hopefully it comes back again, and it often does. But it moves tons and tons of stuff all the time. So those concrete blocks, I thought we were going to have it until we got, I think it was Storm Darcy was the latest one, that just removed so much that actually that becomes non-viable. In respect to the platforms, I have continually tried to explain the requirements in respect of the platforms. But of course, I've been talking to technical engineers and structural engineers about the depth of the piling and what's required and what is needed. But at the end of the day, people go, well, there's one like that there. Why can't I have one like that? And that the difficulty is explaining that. So I've explained it yet again this evening. I suspect it will not be the last time that I have to say no, that doesn't work. That's your 16th century cottage, which is not on the sort of foundations, and doesn't provide the structural integrity that another will provide. So unfortunately, that's where we are. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm sure the time is galloping on.
Thank you. A couple of things. One is an observation from my own observations of being in that area, that part of Felixstowe, and also the booklet here, the pictures of the classic car show that was also in our officer's presentation, and what looks like some sort of service vehicle. It doesn't appear to me that the gap is particularly narrow between the beach and the beach huts in their current location, as in, doesn't seem to be that much of an obstruction. I haven't noticed that myself. The second thing I want to ask is, if procedurally and possibly legally, if there's a judicial review about to be in progress, already in progress, can they be evicted at the moment? Thank you. No, I don't know the answer, hence, yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, we're not talking about eviction. We are talking about termination of a license. So that is a very, very different thing. These are not evictions in the eviction sense of the word. So what we can do, and it's very clear and concise within the license that is issued, terminate that license in the circumstances that we are. So that, and in fact, we have terminated that license. They have no license to be where they are. So that's the first point. In respect of the, as you alluded to, the width of the promenade in that location, I think you need to go there on various days to see that. You know, the Felixstowe councillors and that are here, and those that know Felixstowe very well, will know that it gets absolutely rammed on a hot sunny day. Now we have an added concern. I have an added concern, and that is with the scouring of the beach, with the removal of that beach material, what you end up with is a significant drop. Whereas before, if it got a bit crowded and you're walking along that promenade, you just step onto the beach. Yeah, you can't do that anymore. Well, if you do, you're in for a fall, because we've seen on the pictures that are on there, not only is there, you know, a significant drop, but we're now dropping onto concrete and exposed metal from World War II installations. So I think we just need to be a little bit cautious. You know, the ambition is to have more events on the promenade, better use of the promenade, all those things for those economic benefits that brings, and we really wouldn't want to be placing obstructions there on a permanent basis, and we have no permission to do that. That's another important issue that we shouldn't lose sight of. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The huts I saw yesterday were certainly not replicas. They were very old huts with some of the original joinery and the original grills. I would be very sorry if we were responsible for destroying these if they were told to go. So I think the beach hut owners have made a strong heritage case for retaining at least some of these very old beach huts in niches on this site. And it doesn't seem to me that that option has really been. Yeah. Okay. Are we still in questions? We're not to debate. Okay, I'll speak later on then.
Well, okay, I'm gonna take it as a question anyway. But I think that no one has suggested for a minute that these are replica beach huts. No one has suggested for a minute that some of those beach huts are not old. I won't use the trigger broom analogy, but you know, they are old and they are established transportable, portable, movable buildings. Now, if for instance we were talking about, okay, these are, you know, let's get these historic beach huts at the museum. There's a lot of outside space there, and let's have a beach huts through the ages display. I would be 100% behind you. What I wouldn't be 100% behind is opening a beach hut museum on Felixstowe Promenade in that location, because there is no room to do it. So that for me is the crux of the matter. So I absolutely welcome and support the heritage that the beach huts bring, but we need to do that in a way that is not going to impact on the amenity of the wider population. And no one is talking about destroying anything here. These beach huts remain the property of the owners. There is an ex-member of this council that has in their back garden an original Aldborough beach hut, which had to be moved off the beach, and very proudly looks after that beach hut. Well, I assume that happens with an ex-member of this council. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure where we are in respect of petition and debate and questions. But
Leader, I still have 2 questions, but we are nearly at the additional 30 minutes, so I'm going to need to extend from 15 minutes. I'm going to cut the questions off now. I think we're done after the last 2 people. Seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. We have one of our council groups
Thank you, Chair. Congratulations on your new position as well. I think my question's already been asked, but I just wanted to clarify that my question was going to be in relation to the huts themselves. If they are heritage, state of fragility, etc., how easy would it be safely intact, no possible disruption, if need be, to move gardens? And if that weren't the case, then I'm going to reiterate really the question of Acting Lady earlier on about whether it wouldn't be more prudent just to leave them where they are, albeit temporarily whilst the judicial. So I'm no expert in moving beach huts.
Okay, luckily East Suffolk Council are experts at moving beach huts because we move many of them on an annual basis. So these particular beach huts will have been moved on and off the beach, on the beach in the summer, off in the winter. They are lifted up and they are moved. That is something that happens on a regular basis with beach huts. So they are structurally sound and would survive that.
Thank you. I'm not sure that that's the solution anyway, but I just want to make sure that they remain intact.
I'm now going to move the leader to read the recommendation.
Could you put that slide back up? Yeah. So members, I'm very happy to turn what is my thoughts initially into a proposal for this council, and that is I would propose that this council shares in the disappointment expressed by the 44 affected beach hut owners, acknowledges that coastal erosion is an escalating issue and ongoing risk to our resorts, assets and facilities, appreciates and acknowledges the hard work of officers to find a solution acceptable to all parties, recognises the permanent placement of huts on the promenade will restrict its use by the wider community, remains willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for relocating the 14 huts left without a site, and finally supports the actions to date and directs the results of the judicial review are reported back to full council in due course. I so propose and call for a seconder.
I just wanted to address the issue of the plan. Good quiet. Yeah, I did want to address the issue of the planning application. I appreciate that there's somewhat check into the issue of and Councillor quite rightly asked a question about the potential of the bill. I did just want to speak as the Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee, saying that those applications are stated that he does know Chairman Councillor I hope I
speak to the other members of that committee who were here this evening. I did just want to say that in the consideration of those four applications, as with all of the work we do, that committee, we take our duty very seriously. And we consider those applications thoroughly and assiduously in the diligence that we always get to all applications.
Right, I'll finish what I started. The beach hut owners, as I said, do make a strong heritage case for at least keeping some of the beach huts here. Maybe they could be the 14 who are still homeless, and they could be the original huts, not replicas. And I think it'd be a nice place to have a museum about beach huts. I think they were the first in the country, and they've offered to pay for it. I think it's unfair to remove the huts now with nowhere to go. We made our best efforts to private affordable sites, and for one reason or another, they haven't come up. Can we not just give it a bit longer? I think we should revoke the suspension of their licenses by making them tenants at will until we sort this out. So let's try and reach a compromise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I would like to say that I agree that it's not the beach huts to remain on the common line. Simply limits its width and impacts on the common line. I would also suggest that no pedestrians being hit. It's actually quite dangerous. That's the common line. Most of the arguments are and so I want to visit, but I would just say that I am very supportive of new locations of not remaining parts, and it's still very much that I understand that beach hut owners would prefer not to be on that, and we go back. There are such conflicting arguments that I want to be honest. So therefore, I like to suggest that this whole case is defined in and by facts and so forth. I don't know quite how that is.
Sorry, so you're proposing that the motion that was basically amended to provide for finding so that if that's your, if you're proposing to amend the second. So can you put whether to amend the motion as described by
do all members understand what you're about to be asked to vote on? No, right. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Bing, but members, you are being asked to support an amendment to the motion that was put up on the screen before, where it amends the one which the item which refers to mediation to include reference to where is it? There it goes. Remains willing to engage, where it says it remains willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for relocating the 14 huts. I'm not sure this is going to do what you're asking for, Councillor Deacon, because are you saying that that should be amended to remains willing to engage in binding independent mediation regarding new ideas? That's not what you're looking for, is it? You're asking for something else with regard to that mediation.
What I would like to see the whole case before the independent.
Right, so I think the judicial review will deliver that overarching binding view from an independent court source. Okay, and what you're suggesting is extant to actually the recommendations which are before you at the moment. You're suggesting something which is actually outside. No. Yeah, but this is, I'm sorry, but this is a meeting of the council, not a meeting of the council and the public. I appreciate and respect where you're coming from, but right now we're just trying to sort out something which has just been thrown up.
The country, but this is not the fact that the judicial review.
Sorry, as for the next slide, compare the judicial review is looking at conduct to date, whether it needs piety in arriving at decision licenses. So that's what the permission will be granted for a full hearing at the High Court on that. That's the judicial review. That's the judicial review, and the judicial review they can still hearing on the permission may be denied, but the judicial hearing that's the decision of the council could be quashed. It can be sent back to the council to be reconsidered, or the judicial review to be recused.
Yeah, I think making decisions are very different.
To you, Chair, we go back to, we have a council under the council petition scheme to decide a way forward in response to the petition. A motion has been put by the leader and seconded. We're now debating that motion. It's open to you if you wish to seek support for amending the motion already described. So now we need to debate the amendment and then vote on the amendment.
Point of order for you, Madam Chairman. I just need clarity on what it is that we are debating. So what are the new words that will seek to amend that motion there? So I'd be very pleased to hear the councillor read out his amendment to that motion.
I think I said something like. You okay? Yep. Right. I think I said there are some conflicting arguments, but I don't believe that either side will ever be content. So therefore, I would like to suggest that we sought binding, independent.
Point of order. Is that a suggestion then, or is that a move? Are you moving that as a motion?
I propose an amendment.
Thank you.
I second this because, in the interest of harmony, if this amendment was accepted, I could live with the recommendation as it stands, because I think it provides a level of fairness to the beach hut owners. So I think it's important to pass this amendment so that we show that we're fair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Having in my previous life been dealt with licensing, I've just been reading through the conditions on this license. I think we're losing the plot a bit, and I understand that the council have done really well and they're trying to find somewhere else for these huts. But we issue the license, we don't provide the land necessarily. And it says quite clearly in this license that the council does not warrant that the site is or will remain suitable for permitted use. It also says that we can terminate that license at any time. with giving a month's notice. So are we talking about a licence, or are we actually talking about where we're going to put these caravans? Because I'm confused. They haven't got a licence at the moment, so they shouldn't even be on the prom.
Yeah, thank you. So I acknowledge the why that amendment would be moved. However, I feel I cannot vote in favour of that amendment. And my rationale for saying that is simply that there are too many considerations in place in respect of this. So an independent person that's looking at the pros and cons of this may not be cognizant of all the issues that are there. There's both legal issues and practical issues that are there. First of all, there is no planning permission for them to be there. That's the first thing. So, you know, are we suggesting that an independent look at this, an independent mediation mediation would say you must put in a planning application? Then, yeah, the county council has a stake in this promenade. Are we saying that independent mediation will say to the county council, you've got to do this? There's far too much there. This is about a negotiation. And in the wording that I put there, within the original motion, what I said, we remain willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for relocating the 14 huts left without the site. Now, Councillor Deacon has said in his opening remarks that he fully understands and believes it's not appropriate for them to remain on the promenade, and we share that view, Mike. But I cannot support anything that would put this council in a position where it is required to do something by somebody that doesn't have full oversight of all the issues that are there. And the second thing is binding to whom? Because we are not dealing with one party, we're dealing with 44 parties on the other side. So I think there would be real challenge with that. I would urge members to reject this amendment. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I understand where Mike's coming from. I really do understand, Mike. My concern is that at the moment we have 30 spaces available and we have a lack of 14. If we now go to, let's say, for mediation and we throw this all out, we go for your proposal, there'd be 44 sites to find. Now, let's assuming, that was advocate, as I often am, I go along with Felix Stone and say, I want to put a couple of shots down there on your site that you identified, and someone else do the same. You're not talking about 44 then, because then sites could be very quickly sold on. People will want to buy them if we don't deal with them. So I think we've got to reject that, Mike, with the greatest respect in the world. We've got to concentrate on the 14 that we cannot locate. It's a nightmare. I agree, it's difficult, but our officers and our cabinet are working out on this, as you've obviously seen from tonight. I'm disappointed in this document. I've got it on email. I've read it 2 or 3 times. I can understand where the group are coming from, and I can understand where the council is coming from. And there's got to be somewhere in the middle that the 2 parties are going to agree. And we've got to come up with it. It isn't a sustainable situation we've got now. We've got to move past that. And to continue with negotiations with both parties is the only way that I can see we can do it. So with the greatest respect, I cannot support it.
I'm going to do one final extension of time on this, as we are already at an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to propose 15 minutes. Councillor Gallen, seconded by Councillor Ribbett. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried. I'm happy to vote on
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on your job. I don't really understand where these coming from. Surely if we got an independent mediator, that person actually have to be qualified to understand fully all the consequences of it. And yes, this is a way forward, we're suggesting. Councillor Golson wants to be a way forward to mediate. Surely an independent mediator is the answer. Thank you, Madam Chair. Page 85, document. Yes. Item number 6. One of the options is on. But whether you perhaps object to the fact that you might find the inquiry, I can understand that, because sometimes that can tie up. I think we all want to see the same thing, the same result. We want to see the win-win solution. If we can possibly get it, or at least a half win. So the local government association do offer mediation services, and 90% cases they resolve the situation. So perhaps we should consider just referring the whole of this to the LGA, come back with their own suggestions. I can understand what you're saying. What are you saying? Well, that is an independent inquiry, isn't it? No, that's what the LGA will offer, but it will prolong it, as I say, between since 2018. So I think what we're trying to say is, whatever is decided through mediation here, it has to be around the circle. Judicial review work and that will come back about processes, and we could even say that the process even this evening before that the judicial whether we seek the unfair. That's really just trying to find that word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In line of Madam Chairman, in light of what has been a lengthy debate and a thorough presentation and some of the points that have been raised, I will just draw back to the legal proposal, which I think is very fair and very reasonable. And I will draw everyone's attention to remains willing to engage in mediation regarding new ideas for relocating 40 huts elected with post. I think that covers the requests and the point that we made regarding mediation. As I say, this is fair and reasonable, and I propose we go to a vote on the amendment and then go on to thereafter.
Yes, I agree with that. I made this proposal to try and employ contract.
Brings us back to original recommendation. I still have 3 people on stage. Thank you and congratulations on your role. I can't support the leader's proposal because I don't believe the niches proposal has been fully explored, and the beach huts do add an important heritage aspect to the town where they are. I would also like to say, having worked with various museum services, there is a huge difference between preserving the heritage of a town and putting things in museums. So Steve, if you ever want to chat about that, I'm available.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as ward councillor for East Suffolk Council area, I feel I must add a few final comments. The amount of backing for this petition underlines the support for the traditional beach huts that we all love and find in abundance along our coastlines. Here in East Suffolk, we celebrate beach huts and support those wishing to continue the long tradition. We do this by offering various safe sites to place and enjoy their great days by the sea. Unfortunately, beach huts by their very name are subject to the elements, subject to tide and storm, and dependent on, as in this case, having a safe beach to sit upon. As we have heard this evening, the traditional position at the Felixstowe Spa area has been compromised and has, for the last few years, been deemed unsafe. The placing of the hut's length on the prom was always unsatisfactory and was only ever meant to be temporary. The promenade is, as explained and understood, a designated highway and should not be permanently obstructed in any way without license. There are many regulations covering the use of a public highway maintained by the public purse, and I fear a long, protracted and uncertain planning application for either the permanent placement on the prom or for the building of stands on the beach. However, and whatever the outcome of further negotiations, I would, as a local ward councillor, fully support any application from existing site tenants to receive first refusal to return to the beach side should it become available in the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've all heard the arguments for and against them as they are. In some people's minds, it's not resolved and it will have to go forward. But I want to put a case to you that I recently suffered. As many of you know, my wife passed away last year. In her final year, I would take her out at her request for country runs in odd places. And we had to choose roads that were not bumpy. And one of her requests was, will you take me to the seaside? I'd like to see the sea again. So I took her down there and we went to the area near the Fludges. We'd been there a little while in the car. She could no longer walk any real distance, so she wanted to sit in the car and look out at the sea. Finally, she said, Chris, will you take me home? Because all I can see is the back of the beach huts. You know, there are other users of the prom besides the beach hut owners. And whilst I'm quite happy for beach huts to be there, it would be nice to have some spaces where they're not there. And I think this proposal, in a roundabout way, admittedly, hopefully, will create a little more space. Thank you, everyone.
Beach huts are used by lots of people when they're suffering loss, suffering poor health, suffering unemployment, all emotions that we experience. People go to a beach hut to take their comfort, as well as having enjoyable days out. I'd like to think that the huts that are remaining there will wait there until the end of the concession period, and also remain there whilst their application is submitted for a living heritage asset. So I just urge everybody here in the meeting tonight, officers and councillors, to visit Felixstowe and the Spa Pavilion beach hut area. Experience the beach huts yourself and see all the evening. So when it comes back to the council again, everybody can fully say that they have actually been to Felixstowe and have a understanding of the great efforts that this Felixstowe Beach Hut Association have made. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I will, because I think it's important. So just to wrap up, if I may, you have the recommendations of the proposal before you. I've listened very carefully to the debate, and everybody feels very passionately about this, and that's right, and that's proper. And I think what we all want to see is a good outcome. I'm not sure we're going to achieve that for everybody. If I'm completely honest, I'm not sure we're going to achieve a good outcome for everybody. But what we need to do is we need to make some tough decisions and balance the needs of the wider community with a smaller community, with the needs of this council in respect of its financial prudence as well. I'm really disappointed that you can't support this motion, the recommendations I put there, because you say the niches are not fully explored. I'm really disappointed that you feel that way, and I'm not sure where you got that information from. But clearly, what you're saying is that you don't appreciate or don't think the hard work of officers that are not substantiated. So then it's always you. If not, it will be someone else. So the.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I'm not going to get into the detail of niches and why they would or they would not be appropriate, but they have been looked at. Those options have been looked at. They have all been looked at, and the officers have worked tirelessly to come up with something that provides for all. So, members, I urge you to support the recommendations. So, sorry, the proposals that you've seen there that have been proposed by me this evening and seconded by the Deputy Leader. Thank you, members. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
And that's what we have. At the moment, I'm not very clear even on what the outcome of the vote was, essentially, because I couldn't hear what was said. It looked as if the motion was carried, and we'll check this one and chase it up for you in the morning. At least, I guess, we've seen that a discussion has taken place. The reality is that due to technical problems or the technical setup, at East Suffolk Council, you can't actually hear what most of the people are saying. I found it really distressing that we couldn't actually bring you a proper record of that meeting. I think East Suffolk really need to do something about it to ensure that all of their councillors can be heard during a discussion. That's all we've got to say on that one, really. We'll do our best to bring you an update on what actually happened at the meeting. And when we do that, that will be probably in the morning. We'll see how it goes. Beyond that, there you have it. That's all I can do for you tonight. That completed the discussion on the beach huts. I guess it looks like we're going to have to wait to see what happens with the judicial review. Who knows where that will go. I'm Chris, this is Felixstowe Live. We'll see you soon.